We are live, family. Welcome, welcome. Um, I hope you can hear me. Let's see. Put a one in the chat if you can hear me. Make sure I'm loud and clear. Can you hear me, Mayhem? Just make sure I'm loud and clear. Let's see. Guess not. No one can hear me, huh? Testing, testing. One, two, three. Uh, no. Hold on a second here. Greetings there. Nahuele, solitary soldier. Can you hear me? Put a one in the chat, family, if you can hear me there. Make sure I'm loud and clear, because everyone has to hear and see what's going on here tonight. I'm looking at the chat here. I don't see any ones yet. Okay, okay, awesome. Okay, Weak Boogie, welcome. Brooks, welcome. Al, there we go. Okay, loud and clear. Okay, so let's get a little music here happening for a couple of minutes here. Uh, let's see here. Epic of the Britain, welcome. Welcome, Janine. Can you hear that, Landon? Or is it too low? Oh, it's low. Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on a second here. This is my little intro music. We'll get it right. We will get it right here. Welcome, Armand. We will get it right. Bronze Flat Power God. Long time no talk there, bro. Welcome. Okay, so let's get this right here. Hold on a sec, fam. We can get this right here. Oh, welcome, Empress Awakening. Welcome, welcome. Let me get this quick intro music here happening real quick here. And get it loud and clear. So yeah, I have to stop everyone from getting bit in the neck here, family. Some vampires poured up in here, and we're losing family members, and people are getting bit here. So I have to come here and do my thing here. Do my best blade imitation, family. Okay, let's go and get started here. We can get started, fam. I want to play that a little bit there. Get my blood flowing there. Okay, let's make sure I'm loud and clear. Am I loud and clear? Put a 1 in the chat. Put a 1 in the chat. I'm gonna make sure I'm loud and clear, and then when I play a few videos here, we make sure the family can see the videos as well. Okay, perfect. All right, so see the title there, family. But first, I'd like to thank the family for taking time to tune in tonight. It's Friday night there. I think it's Friday night. Wait a minute, is it Friday night? Thursday night, I think. Yeah, Thursday night. Excuse me. um, I really appreciate that. I'd like to give shout outs. First, I want to give shout outs to a lot of people here who's made some strong contributions, changed lives in this here battlefield here down here, family that we've been dealing with here, and it's 2026. I would give shout outs to A1 first. He was the one who, especially for this Aboriginal community, he gave me, allowed me to do a presentation on this channel. It's over 6 years ago. Before that, back in 2007, 2008, when we had Blog Talk Radio, I was in a different community. I used to give presentations there back then with, people like Tosh Tariq Bey and Sabir Bey and etc. Things have changed a lot. Also, addition to A1, Aboriginal Power did it. Allowed me to do presentations on his channel. Shout outs to him. Subscribe to his channel. Young people doing great things. Also, I see the Duke of Tears. I go way back with him. And he's been in the game for well over maybe 30 years, since the 90s. And also other individuals who's influenced others, who's especially when it comes to genealogy and a lot of people from these individuals, a lot of people came to me and told me that that these people had a positive influence in their lives. Kerr Mayo, Dane Calloway, and Top Cats. So shout outs to them as well. I'd like to give shout outs to Mama Neen, who's been helping a lot of people there positively. Aretha Wright, and of course my man Mike Fry, true soldier there, and also Lisa Cypress, a true warrior. Wish you the best there, Mr. Kerry Davis. So, as I said, I had to come back, family, and push back on these witches and warlocks who are basically an existential threat to our future. Last time I thought I separated us from a lot of these, a lot of these Africans coming after us. You had three Africans um, on a podcast talking on American business, Joy Reid and a couple other guys on there, and they're still talking falsehoods, right? And then my question is, to these FBAs, a lot of there's some positive stuff about that. The good thing is a lot of the youngsters are realizing that, wait a minute, you guys are saying we're this, but we're not that. That's a good positive thing. But their message is inconsistent, right? And it's causing a lot of problems. And, so the notion where you had the Ghanaian president come to New York and people are, a lot of them are saying that, oh, well, you sold us. Well, if they sold you, then you're an African. And the president of Ghana has every right to speak on your behalf. There's nothing you can do about that. So, but it gets even deeper, family, because I hear they say different messaging. There's a youngster. Black Alf was brilliant, a very talented young man, and he says a little bit different. He does talk about him and many of his family members being American, but there's others unlike him who they have a different messaging. They have to get together to maybe rebrand themselves correctly. So, because when you say that, you're basically opening the door, and they're pouring in here. They're pouring in here, right? And so we're gonna get into it, and I'm gonna show you. We'll get into the presentation here now, family, because this is getting ridiculous, and they have a lot of explaining to do. A lot of explaining to do. So let's start here. Hello, Master Sword. Welcome. Let's start here with this here. Let me share this with the. Let me share my screen first here, cause we source up and we show everything that we're saying here. Let's see. Let's share my screen. Entire screen here. There we go. Okay. There we go. Sharing the screen here. Okay, so let's get started here. So first I'm going to start with this here, right? First we're going to start with this. These are letters. Now there's a gentleman named Dennis Sperling. He's an attorney out of Houston, Texas. You know, and you can go over. He has positive information. You can watch it. But he's an attorney, and he sent a letter to President Donald Trump about FBAs. So let me share that. This is respectfully. But okay, so let's make sure the family can see that there. Okay. All right. So he's an attorney. You have any legal problems? I believe he practices family law. Reach out to him. Subscribe to his channel. He put this out. So I disagree with it, and I'm gonna, this is a critique, respectful critique, and I'm gonna tell you why I disagree with it. So let's make sure everyone can see this here. Okay. I want to make sure the family can see this letter here. Let me look at the chat here. Hold on. Make sure this letter is, one can see that. Put a one in the chat, family. You can see that letter. Let me go back to it. Make sure you can see it. Oh, this is what I can do here. Hold on. Let me get a separate device because I don't watch the chat when I'm doing my thing here. Need to make sure everyone can see this. So let's do this. Okay, we can see it. Okay, now let's make it bigger. It's a little bit bigger here. It's a little bigger. Blow it up. Okay, so it's to the Honorable Donald J. Trump, right? Request for executive leadership on the Foundational Black American Slave Trade Restorative Justice Act of 2025. Dear Mr. Trump, my name is Dennis D. Sperling, and I write to you as an attorney and representative of a growing coalition committed to lineage-based restorative justice for foundational Black Americans who are descendants of those unlawfully trafficked into the United States after the 1808 federal ban on the transatlantic slave trade. Okay, now let's before we move forward, let's analyze this specific paragraph. So according to Dennis D. Sperling, who's a representative of this coalition committed to lineage-based restorative justice for foundational Black Americans, so he's a representative. So according to him, foundational Black Americans were trafficked into the United States after 1808. Not before, after. So according to Mr. Sperling, FBAs are Johnny-come-latelys. Let's continue. I respectfully submit for your review the enclosed draft legislation titled the Foundational Black American Slave Trade Restorative Justice Act of 2025, along with the proposed executive order establishing a federal task force to investigate and respond to these historic crimes. These instruments represent a legally sound, historically justified, and morally imperative path toward redress for uniquely American lineage, foundational Black Americans, FBAs. They address the enduring historical significance and profound national importance, the legacy of the illegal post-1808 transatlantic slave trade, and its direct impact on the descendants of those Africans unlawfully brought to the United States in violation of the Act prohibiting the importation of slaves, 1807. So, FBAs are Africans who came post 1808. Okay? Post 1808. Let's go to page 2. Let's go to the next one here. Let's go to page 2 here. Okay, it's page 2. Now let's blow it up a little bit, make it bigger. Go. And a little bit bigger there so everyone can see. Okay, despite this federal prohibition taking effect on January 1st, 1808, evidence confirms that slave ships, the Clotilda and the Wanderer, continued transporting enslaved Africans directly to U.S. soil, often with the involvement or sponsorship of certain African kingdoms. These actions were not only illegal under U.S. law, but also inflicted permanent damage on the individuals enslaved and their descendants, now known as foundational Black Americans. So foundational Black Americans are Africans from African kingdoms, shipped on the Clotilda and the Wanderer. Okay, let's continue, because we're going to read it and then we're going to analyze and break this down here, family, here. As a legal scholar and practicing attorney, I have drafted proposed legislation titled the Foundational Black American Slave Trade Restorative Justice Act of 2025, designed to establish federal jurisdiction for civil actions against successor African states whose predecessors participated in these post 1808 transgressions. I have also developed a complementary executive order to be issued by the President of the United States. The executive order formally establishes an interagency task force to investigate successor African states' involvement, recommend legal and diplomatic remedies, and assist in the development of federal legislation. Legal and constitutional basis. More than 2 centuries ago, the act prohibiting the importation of slaves, 1807, made it a federal crime to traffic enslaved Africans into the U.S. after January 1st, 1808. Yet, as documented with slave ships like the Clotilda and Wanderer, illegal trafficking continued, with many African kingdoms acting as collaborators in direct defiance of U.S. law. This proposed act establishes federal jurisdiction for civil actions against successor African states, whose historical regimes participated in illegal post-1808 trade. It follows the precedent set by the Justice Against Sponsors of Terrorism Act, 2016, which permits U.S. citizens to sue foreign entities that supported illegal actions causing harm on American soil. Like JASTA, this legislation includes a waiver of sovereign immunity, a private right of action, and a 50-year statute of limitations beginning upon the claimant's discovery of eligibility. The Supreme Court of the United States recently upheld the constitutionality of JASTA in 2023. Twitter Inc. versus Timonic. Additionally, U.S. and international human rights law recognized forced labor and slavery as enduring harms subject to legal and diplomatic remedy. The Act aligns with these standards and draws authority from Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, as well as the 13th and 14th Amendments, empowering Congress to redress civil rights violations. These enslaved African individuals were citizens of these African kingdoms, and they were unlawfully captured, tortured, and sold as sold to slave traders. This proposed act would reflect the principles of sovereignty, citizenship, and protection from state-sponsored abuse under the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, prohibiting governments from engaging in unlawful torture, cruel treatment, and arbitrary arrest. United Nations, 1966. International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Articles 7 through 9. Presidential executive authority. As established through executive orders like Truman's Executive Order 9981, desegregation of the military, and Clinton's Executive Order 12898, environmental justice, the president has broad authority to investigate and redress past legal injustices. This enclosed executive orders would formally establish, and that's about it right there. That's what I have, family. I think it's 3 pages, but I got the most important 2. So let's examine this here. So FBA are Africans who recently, now the Clotilda and the Wanderer, because he said post 1808. Now, according to Mr. Sperling, FBA Africans, according to Mr. Sperling, FBA Africans. So we're going to call them Africans. These Africans came post 1808 on the Clotilda and the Wanderer. If they came on the Clotilda and the Wanderer family, we're talking about basically 1860. 1860 for the Clotilda and 1859 for the Wanderer. So, but we see these contradictions because FBA call themselves foundational. You're not foundational if you just got here in 1860. So now let's examine the Clotilda and the Wanderer. Okay? As he said, transporting enslaved Africans from certain African kingdoms, FBA. Okay, so they're Africans. Now let's take a deep dive here. Let's do our let's perform surgery here, family. Let's perform surgery. Hold on a second here. Okay, let's get to this here. So let me look at my map here. All right. So we're going to go to the archives. We're going to go to the archives, okay? All right. Now, let me blow this up here. So this is from the National Archives at Atlanta, okay? Cargo manifest for the Clotilda. Now, this is their story. Now we're gonna see inconsistencies in their story, right? Because they always have to write stories about us, narratives, and you know, we know how I go. We know how it is. So let me read this to the family here. On February 27th, 1860, the schooner Clotilda, commanded by Captain William Foster, departed Mobile, Alabama, for what this document describes as St. Thomas or a market. So what they're saying is on February 27th, 1860, the Clotilda left Mobile, Alabama, and according to the manifest, it went to St. Thomas, which is the Caribbean. Well, we're going to continue to read because now they're going to say they actually did not go to the Caribbean. And let me read here. Actually, the vessel sailed to the coast of West Africa, where it loaded a cargo of 103 captives for transport back to the Mobile area. The ship entered Mobile Bay in early July 1860, carrying its human cargo 52 years after the United States legally abolished the international slave trade. Our holdings related to Clotilda include additional U.S. Customs Service records that document the vessel's activities transporting cargo after its commissioning in 1855. Now, it was commissioned in 1855, which meant that's when it started to operate, until its final voyage in 1860. Additionally, U.S. District Court and Circuit Court records document the criminal charges against the illegal voyagers' organizers. Now, we only knew that information because if we just knew that information, family, we think, oh wow, that's incredible. But now, according to Mr. Sperling, FBA were brought on the Clotilda. Well, the Clotilda only had one voyage. Now, the manifest says the Caribbean, but the cover story is that they went to West Africa. But if they went to West Africa on one trip, and even if they did bring back human cargo, they brought back FBA in the 1860s in July? Wow. How many of your family's genealogy go back pre-1860? How many family members out there listening who've done their genealogical research? You have ancestors pre-1860? You have any ancestors documented on a ship manifest coming from the Clotilda? Continue here. Okay? So now we scroll. Let's see here. Now we're going. I'm going to actually, this ship manifest, I have a copy of it. I'm going to zoom in on it. So hold on a second, family. So let's get to this here. Okay, so here's the National Archives. This is what they say. So they want you to believe, but we're going to catch them lying, basically. And they're not smart at all because they can't even cover their own tracks. They don't really they don't dot their I's and cross their T's, family. This is from the National Archives, right? The Clotilda. Okay, so built and licensed in Mobile, Alabama in 1855. The Clotilda, or Clotilde, was a two-masted schooner that measured 86 feet long by 23 feet wide. She had a copper hull and measured 120 tons. According to the records, the ship's first voyage transporting cargo. Hold on a second here. Let's make sure. Am I still live here? I guess so. Hold on. Let me make sure everyone can read that. Let me check the chat here. Hold on one second here, family. Look at the chat. Okay, so we're live. Okay. Uh, Joaquin, Mr. Spurley sent a letter to President Trump. We have to analyze this. Okay? We have to analyze this, fam. So let's get back to the. Could everyone see? Make sure everyone can see it. Okay, so we need to analyze and confirm whether or not it's true, family. Because we've been so used to people telling us things and we just buy it wholeheartedly without confirming whether or not it's true. Okay, so let me continue here. She had a copper hull and measured 120 tons. According to the records, the ship's first voyage transporting cargo was on January 25th, 1856, when she departed for Havana, Cuba, carrying 70,000 feet of lumber. Throughout the next 4 years, the Clotilda continued to ferry goods between Mobile, domestic ports in Texas and Louisiana, and foreign ports in Cuba and Mexico, establishing itself as a reliable cargo vessel. The Clotilda, commanded by Captain Foster, entered Mobile Bay on July 7, 1860, carrying 103 slaves from a quote a foreign kingdom, place, or country. Okay? 52 years later, after the United States illegally abolished the international slave trade. Right? So it's saying here that it left February and came back on July 7th, 1860, carrying cargo of 103 slaves, which meant that when the ship disembarked, allegedly on July 7th, 1860, it was carrying 103 slaves. Right? That's what they want you to believe. This will make the Clotilda the last known ship to bring slaves to the U.S., unloading her cargo just over 18 months after the Wanderer landed at Jekyll Island in Georgia. So again, the Wanderer 1859, Clotilda 1860. According to Mr. Sperling, this is when FBA got to America. Let's continue. And we got these individuals here. Now we go down here. Okay, so here's the history of basically the Clotilda cargo manifest history for its short 4-year run. So we got January 25th, 1856. It went to Cuba carrying lumber, right? And Havana, sugar, beef, plantains, right? Got all this history here. And the very last voyage. Now, this is basically the Caribbean, Mexico, right? Molasses and sugar. And then here, now 1860, February 27, 1860, departed for St. Thomas or Market, okay, carrying 41,000 feet of lumber, 18 barrels of whiskey, 17 barrels of flour, 46 barrels of beef, 74 barrels of bread, and of course William Foster, right? And it's the final ship manifest for the Clotilda. All right. So now let's look closely at the ship manifest, family. Now remember, it's telling us that they came back on July 7th, 1860. Remember that date, right? It entered Mobile Bay on July 7th, 1860, carrying 103 slaves, right? Now let me pull up the ship manifest here. I took screenshots so we can zoom in closely on it, okay? Okay, here we go here. There we go. All right, so this is the ship manifest, family. Glance view, we don't need that. Let's zoom in on this here. So we see that. Here's the manifest of the car, the schooner Clotilda, William Foster. It's the captain, master bound for St. Thomas or Market, which is the Caribbean. Okay? And here's the articles that was inspected when he returned. But now remember, they said July 7th. Right? Now let's go down to the bottom of this. No, hold on. Matter of fact, for this the cargo, 40,000 feet of lumber, right? 18 pounds of whiskey, 18 bottles of whiskey. It looks like 75 bags of flour. There's beef and bread. Okay, now let's go to the next screenshot so we can see the date. Because now they told us it came back July 7th with 103 slaves, but we don't see that on the manifest. Here is the actual date it returned. Now we could check out here. Okay. Right down here. It says, I, William Foster, Master, Commander or Market, do solemnly sincerely and true schooner now delivered, collected district, subscribed with any, basically just him swearing when he enters the port, when he came back to Mobile, Alabama, they inspect everything and he has to swear as to what's the cargo. But the key here is the date, because they told you July 7th. But here's the actual date here. Hold on. Let's that. Cancel this. We don't need that. Need that. Here's the actual date, family. July 1860. Okay? Now, but I went even deeper, okay, because I went into on because I needed to do find out about the Clotilda. So if you go on to slavevoyages.org, it gives you these accounts, but very few sources, basically no sources. But I found this one interesting source, and I took screenshots. So let's get into that because it talks about the Clotilda and the Wanderer. So let me share this with the family here. Hold on. Let me make sure. Okay, 5 through 8. Okay, so um, 5 through 8, right? 5 through 8. Okay, here we go. All right, so let's close that door there. All right, so let's look at this here together, fam, because this gets into the where these stories came from. All right. Okay, so let me read this. Spears says nothing about the trial of Meager. And remember, Meager was the name that was mentioned in the archive story. They talked about there was a trial for the alleged crime, right? Spears says nothing about the trial of Meager, nor does he give any indication as to where he obtained his detailed information. Frederick Bancroft, writer of Slave Trading in the Old South, 1931, states that 103 Africans were transferred. We read that, family, from the archive story. But now when we saw the manifest, when it entered back into Mobile, there was no such manifest and no such cargo. So it says the Bancroft states that 103 Africans were transferred to a steamer in July 1860, in line with the contemporary rumors. Then he adds, quote, the main facts about the Clotilda were quickly made known to the Department of Justice, but presumably on account of the presidential campaign then raging, prosecution was delayed and succession soon intervened, unquote. So now it's the voice of the guy who's critiquing all of this. Bancroft, normally a careful scholar, gave no source for this information. There was, of course, no Department of Justice at that time. And the letters received by the Attorney General from officers in Alabama contained nothing relating to the Clotilda landing. Bancroft's claim that there were no prosecutions conflicts with the reports of Wish and Byers. However, it is not clear why succession would necessarily have interrupted them, because Southern courts took over pending federal cases and because importation of slaves was prohibited by Alabama law. Let's go to the next screenshot. Okay, so this is okay, this is the same one here. Let's go to the next one here. Okay, so Wish's sources are S.H.M. Byers, the last slave ship, Harper's Monthly Magazine, 1906. And these are the pages. But now the guy says the American Anti-Slavery Society is thoroughly unreliable on such matters, and Byers' article seems to be no better. Byers, though claiming to have obtained this information from some of the Africans who were landed, gives numerous details about the business side of the voyage, which must have been unknown to them. Furthermore, he cites no authority for these details. He is vague about Captain Meager's trial. The general tenor of the article is so emotional and anti-government that it is worthy of little credence on that ground alone. John R. Spears in the American slave trade, 1900, states that the Clotilda brought over 175 Negroes and lost not a single one. He puts her down as a 327-ton vessel, which is not true because we just read it's a 120-ton vessel. Remarkably large for a schooner, and states that only 25 Negroes could be sold because of the rush of officials for prize money. He contends that Meagher lost 100,000 on the venture, even though the slaves cost only 88,460 in gold, plus 90 casks of rum and 80 cases of cloth. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, but no good evidence of this. Moreover, these three authors give three different versions of the affair, and not one offers a sound source for his assertions. And let's see here. Let's go to the next deal here. Hold on. About the Wanderer. Okay, so about the Wanderer here. No full, accurate account of the Wanderer's voyage and of the subsequent prosecution has ever been written. It says the most valuable single source is a collection of papers concerning the prosecutions at Savannah and so forth. Now, so, and this is directly out of the slavevoyages.org, right? And now one of the creators of that is Professor Dr. David Eltis, former professor of at Emory University, I believe, in Georgia. So, but let's hear directly from the doctor, the professor, who was one of the creators of slavevoyages.org, who has access to ship manifests, and he would be more of an authority than Dennis Sperling, right? So hold on one second, family. Let's go to that real quick. Oh, this is what I wanted to show. This is what I wanted to show. Hold on a second here. Yeah, I wanted to show this real quick. This, let's see. No, not here. Hold on one second, family. Let's see. Hold on one second. Okay, yeah, this one here. So there were some census records, and it did have documented um, African people from Africa, actually. So let me share that real quick. There's evidently an opportunity for research in the original returns of the ninth census. But in any event, there could not have been much smuggling in the late 50s unless there were a conspiracy of silence among African Negroes to conceal their origin. And why would they conceal their origin? Because the 14th Amendment gives federally protected citizenship rights to all persons born or naturalized in the United States, not to illegal immigrants smuggled in by stealth. Right? And let me go to the next one here. So these are some, according to the census records. I believe it was the ninth. That's the, I think, 1880. Okay. Now this is this is important. 1880, the 1880 census. These are African-born Negroes in a few of the states. But now remember, family. But now these were allegedly illegally smuggled in, and they had to hide, right, But now remember the 1870 Naturalization Act, right? What's the 1870 Naturalization Act? That was a remedy for Africans. Pre 1870, Africans couldn't have been citizens. 1870 was the remedy because it allowed them to be naturalized. So let's quickly look at it. So we don't just talk, we have to back everything up. 1870 Naturalization Act. 70 Naturalization Act. Okay, yeah, right here, right here. So, okay, so right here, just real quickly, and anyone can look this up. Um, so, extending the naturalization process to aliens of African nativity and to persons of African descent. Okay? After 1870, persons of African nativity and persons of African descent could be naturalized American citizens. After 1870, not pre 1870. So now, which means that if there were any Africans in America after 1870, they were naturalized. So which means there'll be a naturalization paper trail on their ancestors. Any of you, anyone in the audience have naturalization papers on their ancestors? Or were you here before that? If you're here before that, then you don't fall up under that category. So let's continue to read here when I was reading there. Okay, so now look. So according to this census, right? Look at this. So this is the 1880 census. This is what they're saying. 414 in Louisiana, 318 in Texas, 314 in Georgia, 237 in Alabama, 231 in South Carolina, 122 in Mississippi, 86 in Florida. 47 African-born Negroes were found in Tennessee and 32 in North Carolina. No other state had any appreciable number. And the slave breeding states of Kentucky and Virginia had only 6 and 3, respectfully. Okay? And unfortunately, the published statistics do not break down these African born Negroes by age. Okay, so, and of course, the ninth census would be the year 1880, 10 years after the Naturalization Act, right? So now let's hear directly from the horse's mouth, one of the founders of the African, so slavevoyages.org, Dr. Eltis. Okay, so hold on a second here, family. Okay, here we go right here. Hear what he says here. And this is from One Question Series. Um, go over and subscribe to that brother's channel. I want to make sure the family can hear all of this. Put a one in the chat if Dr. David Eltis says about the Americans, colored Americans who are here in America. 1865 is what he's talking about. The Americas. Okay, hold on 1 second. Let's see here. And then we'll just load this up here, family. You hear directly from him. Hopefully you can hear that. Okay. And am I back? Put a one in the chat if you can hear me. I should be back. Let me share my screen. This is what they do. Can oh you can't hear me? Oh wow, hold on. Oh, you can hear me now? Put a one in the chat. Okay, there we go. See, this is what they do, family. They cut us off. Um, what was the last thing you saw there, family? Did you see the video from Dr. David Eltis? What was the last thing that what did we leave off when we got cut off there? Was it the video? Because I wanted to share the video. Okay, welcome, Karen. So I was sharing the video of Dr. Eltis, the founder of slavevoyages.org. Did the family see that? And that's when we got cut off. Okay, okay, perfect. So let's go back to that video again.